Hello everyone, this is your friendly neighborhood Alwyn of Notting Hill Quill. Today I'm going to do the second installment of making a 15th century book. In this case, a 15th century method of what they call bookbinding. In this case, in this video, I'm going to show you the basics of how to make the signature itself and how to create um, the binding holes and so forth. Now, it's pretty simple. I usually take my paper. In this case, I'm using basic copy slash printer paper. Nothing to it. Obviously, it's easy to do. I will count out 50 when I get off of the package and put it up here, out of the way, just something like that. Then I'll start taking them out, count up 10, put them in a stack, count up 10, put them in an angled stack, back and forth till I go through all 50 sheets. This way I know when I get from one to the other, when I get 10 done, 20, 30, 40, and 50, I'll know that I have just created the beginning of my book. Now, we will fold these sheets over. Obviously, I don't have 50 sheets here. I'm just using this for teaching purposes. Once we fold one sheet over, I'm taking it from an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It is obviously going to be 8.5 by 5.5. This will create 4 pages. Basically, well, this is 2 put together. Let me go ahead and do that. So using front and back of each page, 1, 2, 3, 4 actually. Using both sets, I can't talk. Using that, it becomes ready to be inserted on your signatures, which I will show you in a minute. This is the simple fold thing. Obviously, we all know how to fold a sheet of paper in half, at least widthwise, at least longwise. Obviously, it shouldn't be a problem. Main goal, just make sure everything's lined up. Make sure that it's not coming apart and doing much. Coming away from each other. It's okay if it's a little bit off when you come off with the fold, because what's going to happen is later you're going to trim these edges a little bit just to make sure that everything lines up, because once the signatures are tied together, in this case sewn together, they're not going to be perfect. They're going to be off by a little bit from each other just because, well, the string's going to shift it a little bit. So although you want to try to get it as close and as straight as possible, you're going to have to trim it a little to make sure everything is set up and lined up properly once you're sewn together. Obviously, this is the easy part. You just pull back with your thumb, go through. I start in the middle because I just find it easier, and pull back. Now, obviously, you have an edge back here, a fold, but you want to crisp it. You want it as thin as possible. You can use your basic ruler, the side of the ruler, just to do that. I'm going to use a boning tool, as I mentioned before, in the first episode of this series. What I'm going to do, I'm using this straight one for obvious reasons, because it has a nice crisp sharp edge. You're going to lay it down and do this at an angle. Don't do the whole thing at once. Do it at an angle, push this way, and then again, to complete that, you want to do that. You want it crisp. You want it nice and flat, because once everything's inserted, if you don't have it inserted, if you don't have it crisp, it is not going to, won't line up properly. Obviously, it's nice and crisp here. So I've got a sheet here that's already been folded. You want to take it with the outer piece, match it up with this piece where the folds are, and just fill it in here. Put it together. Putting this together makes a signature. 8 pages in all. So with back and front of each, it becomes 8 pages, what we call a signature. You will do these several times. You'll go through your sheets making these signatures, and it'll come out something like this. Again, this is not a full 50 sheets. It is approximately 30 sheets that I have in my hand, maybe about 25. This case, you'll want to, at this point, create your back and front sheets using cardstock. These, once you've folded them and sewn everything together and you're ready to put the cover boards on, these will be glued at the very end of your binding, because these, the outer part of these, are going to be glued to the back of your case cover to cover up inconsistencies in the cut of your covering for the case for that book. Now, in this case, obviously these, as I stated earlier, are going to be 8.5 by 5.5, half your sheet of your 11. But you want to make these, because you want this fold here, you want to add an additional ½ inch, because this is where your sheets are going to be inserted like such, and you want that extra on top to fold over your sheets. So this, using the cardstock, which is also 8.5 by 11, you want to mark it at 6 inches from this end to where this ends. When you're once you've done it, it's at 6 inches. Now, at this point, I generally use a paper cutter, because the scissors, it's not going to be a very straight thing. You can use the slicer style, or you can use a different version. Obviously, this is the ones that goes back and forth. I just line them up. On this end, it has a metal piece where the blade actually goes in and cuts across. You want to line that 6 inches, the dot that you've made on it, to mark it. You want to line it up with that line and cut that additional off the top. Now, that is how I make the cover and such. The for your signatures, this becomes your signature set. Now, obviously, at this point, it's ready to be cut. Now, I actually, using a board, in this case something like I used a padded board and made a template where I mark the number of holes I need. This is a little off. I didn't mark it properly. That's my fault. But making the template, I take a mark on the end of my template and mark the 6 positions. So you've got it laid down. You line this up with your hooks for your sewing rack. You want to mark each hook mark on your sheet down here, or template, depending on how you're doing it. Once you've got the marks in place, there will be a space between the ends and your last marks. You want to take half of that and mark it here, because there is, so you'll have 8 marks on it, not just the 6 for the hooks. These will be separate, which I will go over for you in a little bit. These will be your anchor marks, and it'll also be something you'll use to sew through to put your headbands on to your signature when it's ready. That being said, now that you've got that marked, for instance, here, it's not quite straight, please forgive me, and this is not the number of cuts that should be in it. I kind of messed that up. But you'll have your marks here. You'll add an additional one on each side, here and here, with about an equal distance from the button from the mark to the end of your paper, the edge of your paper. That's where the headband will be. Headband and your anchor marks will be. Now you want to keep these positioned as well as you can. I use binding clips. They make it a little easier for me. Do as you wish. You want to string it together, you want to put a big paper clip on it, whatever. You want to put a chip bag binder on it, whatever works for you. This is a little off at the moment. I just noticed it kind of shifted on me. So make sure it is as flat as possible when putting these on. Trying to keep from losing control of the clip. Forgive me. It's a little weird today. There we go. Do the same thing on this side for me. I'll just switch this over because I'm right-handed. It'll just be easier. And now your signatures are in place and lined up properly so that when you go to make your cut marks, everything will be ready. Now, you'll put that to the side for now. At this point, you want to start your braiding. Now, you can do the braid for your support in multiple ways. You'll have options. What you'll want to do, get this out of the way for a moment, is you're just going to basically make a little space for yourself here. You don't have to keep it up. And I'm going to take the braid. I've got 6 feet of the twine that I'm using for my supports. I've taken a larger binder with a 2 pound sewing weight, not sewing, but fishing weight on it, just to give me a little extra tautness. Make it a little taut, a little weight down. This was actually given to me, this particular one, by Dame Morwenna to do Kumo Himo. It works for this too. You can do it any way you like. The idea here is to control things, is to control how it hangs as you fold. So you're just going to do your basic braid and do this. Now, as you're braiding, that weight will make it a little easier to control and easier to keep tight. So you're just going to continue your braid. Now, I'm not going to braid all 6 feet of this because that's just too long for this video. But as you can see, the braid has begun. Now, also you can see how the weight is bringing it downward, and of course as I go it will continue to drop. You will probably, once it gets to a certain point, adjust it, take it off one end, move it to the next, a little further up, because it'll hit the floor and no longer be any good. So once you get to a certain point, you'll start moving it through. Got a little tangle. That's okay. You can work out tangles later, but once you do that, you'll have a braid, much like this one, where you will be using this, and when you get your when you start putting it on the sewing rack, you'll fold a piece over and hang it down. Now this is going to be much longer. You're going to need about 3 feet well, 2.5 feet of the braid, because you want an additional on a, you want enough once you got your signatures in place. You want enough to hang on off one side and hang below the other side as well, because they will be pushed through your cover boards. That being the case, the next video you will be seeing is where I take the um, signatures and I will be cutting your support holes. These support holes will come in very handy, because these support holes are where you're going to be sewing through and securing the supports to the edge of your page, which in the long run will look much like, it says much like that, which I'll show you how I did this. Obviously, I'll also show you what I did with um, the material we're using here. So, thank you for listening. To those of my friends who are uh, out there wishing me luck on my health issues, thank you. You've all been amazing. Hopefully, I'll know more soon. I look forward to seeing you all at events in the very near future. Hopefully, this whole situation will be resolved. I miss every single one of you. I miss being able to hug you, hang out, tell stories, laugh, camp with, beat on you with sticks and get beat on, shoot archery. Everything we always do. I am so missing you guys because of this. I love you guys. You all are awesome. Thank you for allowing me to do this and teach you what I've been learning over the last few months with some of my different projects that I've been doing. Thanks again for everything you've ever done for me. I really appreciated it. You've made my existence in the SCA more than worth it. See you soon for video 3.